Hey guys, so this video is going to focus on how to do basic calculations with decimals. So we're going to talk about how to add, multiply, and divide with decimals. The focus of this video is meant to do these by hand, not using a calculator. If you're using a calculator, it's a matter of just typing them in correctly. But some schools, some colleges even do not allow even a basic calculator. So knowing how to do these by hand is a very good skill set to have. You don't want to get caught up in making minor mistakes with your place values or where the decimal goes. So we're going to talk about how to do this by hand. When it comes to adding or subtracting decimals, the main important part about that is to make sure that you line your numbers up by their decimal point or by place value here. So notice the way that I'm setting these up here. I'm lining them up exactly where the decimal point goes, stacking that directly on top of each other to where all the ones with the tens, the tenths, hundredths, and so forth is lined up in appropriate columns. If you want, you can fill in any empty spots with zeros. Sometimes that just kind of helps to keep everything in line and you know exactly what's in your designated column and what exactly you're adding together. So as long as the numbers are stacked straight on top of each other by decimal point, it's just a matter of adding the appropriate columns. Starting all the way on the right, 7 plus 0 plus 0 gives us 7, 3 plus 0 plus 0 gives us 3, 1 plus 0 plus 8 gives us 9, 0, 0, 0 gives us 0. Here we get a 4. Make sure that you add in your decimal point, and 0 plus 3 plus 1 gives us 4, and then just drop down that 2. So we get 24.40937 as our answer when adding these three together. All right, so let's talk about how to multiply with decimals together. So when it comes to the multiplication with decimals, it's easiest to just pretend that you don't even have decimals in the problem and multiply them like you would if they were whole numbers. I always like to start with, so whatever decimal has the most numbers in it, disregarding decimal points, so I have 1, 2, 3 numbers in 23.8, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers in 1.002. Since 1.002 has more digits in it, I'm going to start with that and I'm going to write it as 1002, and we're going to multiply that by 23.8, or actually technically 238 if you're ignoring the decimals. And for the first part of it, just pretend that they're not decimals and do the regular multiplication. So starting with 8, 8 times 2 gives us 16. 8 times 0 is 0, plus this 1 gives us 1. 8 times 0 is 0, and then 8 times 1 is 8. Remember to add in your 0 on the ones, because since now we're multiplying by tens. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. And 3 times 1 is 3. Put in your 2 zeros now, since we're now in the hundreds place. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. And 2 times 1 is 2. Add all of these up, making sure that you are adding appropriate columns. So here we get a 6, a 7, a 4, an 8, a 3, and a 2. Now when we finally get down to this part here, this is where we consider our decimal place values. Go back up to your original problem, the decimals that you are multiplying together, and count how many decimal place values you have for both of the numbers together. So for 23.8, I have 1 decimal place value. For 1.002, I have 1, 2, 3 decimal place values, giving me a total of 4 decimal place values amongst the two numbers. So over here, looking at my answer, that means starting from the right, I would go over 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and that's where I would put my new decimal. So I get 23.8476 as my answer for this particular problem. And the last calculation that we have here is a division problem. So we are going to be taking 56.4 and dividing that by 0.8. So when you are dividing a decimal by a decimal, you want to take the divisor, that's what you're dividing by, and you want to move that decimal point over until you no longer have a decimal. So I want to take this decimal point and I need to move it over one time because that would give me the number 8. But if I'm going to move that decimal point over one time, I need to do the same thing for my dividend over here. And I need to move that decimal point over one time. Technically giving us the calculation 564 divided by 0.8. So the second thing that we're going to have to do after we move that decimal point is over here in our dividend, once we've moved that decimal point over, we need to bring that up in our quotient up here. Otherwise, we can continue and we can divide. So 8 does not go into 5, but 8 does go into 56 7 times. So we're going to put the 7 up here in our quotient, multiplying down. 7 times 8 is 56. And when we subtract, we get a 0. We drop down our next value here. Dividing 8 into 4, 8 does not go into 4, so that actually goes in 0 times. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add in a 0 over here at the end and drop that down so that we can continue to divide. When it comes to dividing decimals, you typically continue to divide until you get a 0 remainder or until you see that you are getting a repeating decimal as your answer. So doing our next division here, so 8 goes into 40 5 times, multiplying down, 5 times 8 is 40, and we subtract this out and we get a 0 remainder here. So that does tell us that we are done with the division problem. That means that our answer is 70.5. Otherwise, that's it for this video.